Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. You're watching The Right Path. I'm your host, Rida Shah. Being globally bombarded with certain ideals of a perfect life can be overwhelming for believers and non-believers alike. Even if we're opting for a simple life, it is frowned upon oftentimes, and we find ourselves running in a marathon with no finish line at sight. But as believers, we're given a certain guidelines and rules in order to protect ourselves from the external stimulus and not let it affect us. But still, we find ourselves lost, wandering, and not being able to maintain balanced life, which can otherwise be achieved through self-sufficiency. Today, we'll be talking about the importance of self-sufficiency with Dr. Kawal Gesser. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sahiba, how are you?
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Alhamdulillah.
Dr. Sahiba, can you tell us what self-sufficiency actually means?
If we talk about self-sufficiency, this is one of a very supreme quality, and the Arabic word for this is ghina.
Right.
So this basically means that you are able to maintain yourself without any external aid, and at the same time you have confidence in your own abilities and whatever the qualities are within you.
Right. Basically, it's empowering your own self
Yes.
to be capable enough to overcome any challenge that comes your way, right?
And sometimes people, when they empower themselves or they talk about empowerment, it's about my rights and how I practice them or how I'm supposed to, like, inform or create awareness among the whole world about it. But this empowerment in self-sufficiency is with a lot of wisdom.
Right.
Like you're using wisdom on what, where, when, how to go about it.
Right. And usually when people say self-sufficiency, they associate it to just wealth.
Yes.
So do you think it's just about that, or does it have other domains as well?
It is within all the things. Like we find out, the Prophet ﷺ said that richness is not an abundance of wealth, but rather it is contentment of the soul. So when we talk about self-sufficiency, it's your emotional needs, it's your psychological needs, obviously starting with also the physical needs, and then how you're maintaining your relationships, how you're looking at your career choices, and even your education, so everything, even your ibadah, you need to be
Right.
self-sufficient at a certain level in everything.
Right.
Like sometimes even in the matters of religion, people rely on others. Very commonly people say, oh, since I have seen someone not praying properly or was praying but was very angry or very aggressive and hostile person, so that's why I'm not praying.
Okay.
So this is going to be against this concept of self-sufficiency.
Because you're letting someone else's actions define your own self and define
Exactly.
your actions as well.
Exactly.
So that is not acceptable.
No,
indeed.
that is not.
Right.
I have to like understand my own domain, my own ideologies, my own potentials, and make a decision over there. Like again, sometimes people say living in this society, it is not practically possible to practice Islam. That is against the concept of self-sufficiency.
Right.
Or unless you cheat and lie and like they talk about all the long list of the negative traits, and they say unless you go around with practicing them, how would you be successful in life? So
Right.
self-sufficiency tells us no, you can still be doing it well.
Yes, and I would like to take it from there as well, the concept of modern Muslims,
Yep.
where they're like, okay, we associate ourselves with a religion, but they're not practicing Muslims. But I think this is a very contradictory statement in itself. If you're not a practicing Muslim, then you're not a Muslim, right?
I mean, the point is, when I say I'm a modern Muslim, I mean, I would call myself a modern Muslim,
Right.
an up-to-date Muslim as far as the worldly matters are concerned. But my Islam is not coming from those worldly matters. My Islam is coming from Quran, from the
Right.
life of the Prophet. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to see the different scenarios like in the current life, and then trying to see how I can apply the same principle. But I'm not changing the concepts of halal and haram. So
Right.
what is forbidden is
It's
forbidden.
no matter
And-
what.
Yes.
No matter where you are, what circumstances you are in,
Yes.
who you are surrounded with.
And whatever is allowed, it is allowed from Islam, and that is something that I will practice.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, if we talk about self-sufficiency in light of Islam, because we're always told to ask help from God and take refuge in Him whenever you're in a difficult circumstances. But oftentimes there are circumstances where you actually need help from other people as well. So how does Islam guide us in that respect?
It is important that, you know, when we are talking about taking help from other people, and people do get confused that should I be moving forward and taking help, or should I be like just sticking to whatever I can manage on my own. Basically, when it comes to relationships and being self-sufficient in that, there we need to understand the difference between interdependence and codependence.
Right.
So what is interdependence? That is, it is going to like have a difference of making or breaking our relationship. So with interdependence, we will have mutual respect, mutual understanding of give and take. There will be a lot of emotional support. There will also be element of trust over there. Whereas in codependence, totally opposite traits will be there. There will be excessive emotional baggage and psychological baggage, and there will be excessive reliance on another person for that matter.
Exactly.
And basically, in this whole scenario, when we're talking about such relationship, you're a lot of time focusing on external factors, because if you're a self-sufficient person, it doesn't matter what others say. What matters is, again, you're God-oriented, and at the same time, you understand yourself better than what other people are talking about. So that typical remark, log kya kahenge, what will people say, that's not in your game. Another important thing is, such people don't opt for self-sacrifice everywhere. They're not doormats.
Right.
Because self-sufficient people understand what they can do, and they perform according to that. Then there is no emotional suppression in them. And again, we find out that they understand different conflicts, and they understand where their control lies. So self-sufficiency is a dynamic quality that can be practiced.
But in light of the scenarios like difficult situations, how would you advise people to practice self-sufficiency when they're going through emotional turmoil or financial crisis or interpersonal relationship crisis? All of these things, if they're going through it.
We remember this narration from the Prophet ﷺ, where he said, look at the one who is lower than you in worldly matters.
Right.
And do not look towards the one who is above you in worldly matters. In this way, it is more likely that you will not be belittling the blessings of Allah upon you. So whenever we are in crisis, usually we magnify our crisis by looking at those people who seem to be having such a fine life, such a smooth life. They are on the high road, and look at me, I am having a roller coaster ride for myself. So when you remember such thing, you start looking at those people who don't even have those blessings that you have.
Exactly.
Their tests are much more than yours. So let's say you are just quarantined in the times of COVID, and you're feeling miserable being on your own, and you're not able to go out or do anything. So look at those people who with COVID are on ventilators. Exactly. Or need constant oxygen support. So that is something that we need to remember.
So basically we should compare ourselves to other people and their difficulties, and understand that people have it worse.
Yes.
So we should be grateful.
The comparison has to be in the worldly matters, has to be step up. Like when we want to be self-sufficient in the religious matters, we have to look up, step up. Like, oh, there's someone who's reading more Quran than me. Oh, there's someone who is doing excellent work in praying. I mean, she's studying with me, or she's working with me, or she has same kind of an environment. But how come she's able to practice everything and I'm not doing it?
Yeah.
And so for that self-sufficiency, we have to strive that level. But when it comes to the worldly matters, then we have to look at people. We have to step down, look at people who are below us.
Right.
Look at the people who have more suffering.
Okay.
Like sometimes kids, especially teenagers, they complain about their parents. Look at some of the kids who don't have parents.
To begin with. Yeah.
Yes. So then you will realize the importance of it. Similarly, like when we were eating, we ordered pizza and burger or something that we placed an order for, and it turned out not exactly as we wanted. Then look at those people who are eating from the garbage cans.
Yes.
That they are so desperate for food, they don't have a choice like that. So this is the reality of life that we need to be aware of. And somehow what the whole society tells us, and probably we also tell us ourselves, that we like to mask all these images. We want them to be blurred out. It's like a filter that we have within us. And we don't want to think about these things, and these pictures look very ugly to us.
But don't you think it is sometimes important to blur out these images, because again it can be very disturbing for you to watch all these people in miseries and everything like that. I know it's a little off topic, but I think it makes you desensitized as well, because okay, on a daily basis we're witnessing people knocking on our doors and begging. But then when somebody from abroad comes in, they feel so bad because okay, they are not used to this culture. They're not used to seeing kids on the road sleeping just like that. But now I think we've become desensitized to it as well.
You're right, Rida. The point is that what we find out, a very basic norm in Islamic principle is moderation.
Right.
We have been called Ummat-e-Wasat, the most moderate nation. So yes, we need to step down and step up, but everything has to be done in moderation.
Balance.
And the level of that moderation comes again from Quran and Sunnah. We can't make up our own ideologies and statements, because some people would look at me and say, you are an extremist.
Right.
And there would be other people who would look at me and say that we don't find you to be that much religious. How come with this, all this hijab and everything, you are coming up on the screen?
Yeah.
So we can't go by other people's ideologies. We
Right.
have to see what the standards are.
That is very important, because that is when we will actually differentiate ourselves from their perspective, because everybody has a different perspective.
Yes.
If somebody is looking at this table from this side, everybody will have a different view of the situation. You quoted a very good example. Now if you come back to the topic of self-sufficiency, sometimes when you're so self-sufficient, I think it becomes sort of like you become sort of disconnected to other people as well, because you're doing everything yourself. You don't need anybody else. You have that sense of confidence within your own abilities, and you have that, I think it inculcates a sense of pride as well within you, that I don't need anyone, I am good on my own. So do you think that self-sufficiency at some point can become toxic?
As we discussed, that self-sufficiency standard has to come from Quran and Sunnah. What we are talking about is being more independent.
Right.
Because self-sufficiency is about understanding your competence and sticking to that competence and letting that competence flourish. But when we talk about independence, this is like, I don't want to be controlled by anyone. And this turns out to be my basic need as an individual. And obviously when we go towards extreme of any of the quality, we try to like go deep into that, that becomes a problem for us. So whenever we practice something, we can keep a strict watch on ourselves. And like, am I enjoying it? Obviously in the very beginning you won't enjoy something that you have not practiced, but ultimately when you start looking into the benefits of whatever you're getting and you become comfortable it is within your comfort zone, that's when you analyze if I am following the right parameters. And you can also have mentors in your life who can keep guiding you, who can keep telling you that, look, this is where you're becoming too independent, and that independence is going to be very toxic for you.
Exactly.
Or you think you are getting self-sufficient, but you're cutting out people, like genuine people from your life, or where you need to be engaged with other people. So we need mentorship for that, or people who can guide us.
We need people.
Yes.
Basically, even if you're self-sufficient, there's a need of people around you. You can never be self-sufficient alone.
No, we're not, because if it was so, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wouldn't have given us a package of rights and responsibility towards so many relationships. It's in our religion, there is no concept of home alone.
Exactly.
You are with your family members. It's not
And
like it's
there
a
are
thrill right
rights.
for you. Yes,
Yeah.
they have their rights, and we are obliged to fulfill those rights. And that is part of that self-sufficiency, that yes, in any given relationship, I'm there. Like nowadays, spouses, we see both of them are working. And so they become so independent, and they're like, if I come home, I'll cook. And if you come home, you cook.
Yeah.
So there is nothing wrong with that. Like husband, wife, they can help each other and they can decide for themselves what they want. But when they become too independent or too self-sufficient, I have my own money. How dare someone stop me from spending it the way I want to?
How dare somebody tell me otherwise? If I
Yes.
want something, I'm financially independent. I will not listen to anyone.
So that brings in toxicity within the relationship. That brings in a lot of breaches within the relationship. And basically, I want to be self-sufficient and independent, and I want my career choice so that I can manage my relationships well. Similarly, I come across young mothers, because I'm basically a pediatrician. So I come across these young mothers every day, and they'll bring in their newborn baby, and they're so chaotic. They don't know how to handle the baby. They have sleepless nights, and they don't know how to feed the baby, how to take care of the baby. And then I'll ask those mothers, are you educated? What's your degree? What's the degree you hold? Most of the mothers are either bachelors or masters. Some of them are even more educated. They're professionally working in different institutions. And when I look at them, I'm like, you need to return back that degree. Because how come you have a baby in your lap and you are not reading some articles related to what you should be eating or how you should be taking care of the baby? How come you don't have a book in your hand and you have not prepared yourself well for this motherhood? So self-sufficiency in every role is very important. Like I need to know, like as a wife, I shouldn't be running towards my mother or my family members asking them repeatedly, my husband is doing that, my mom-in-law is doing that, my sister-in-law is doing that, what should I do? Because they will have all their sympathies and empathies toward me.
They will not give you balanced advice.
They will not be able to give me the balanced advice. I need to, yes, I can discuss with them, I can take some basic parameters from there, but I need to be self-sufficient to decide on my own in that given environment how I should be very effective. So in any given role, it is very, very important to be self-sufficient.
Very important point raised by you, because I think oftentimes we blame it on others. Okay,
Yes.
so that person advised me this way, that is why I'm here. But if you have that sense of self-sufficiency within you, you will be more responsible in your decisions.
Yes.
And you will not shy away from making such decisions as well, because you'll be okay,
True.
you're the one
Absolutely.
who will bear all the repercussions.
Yeah.
So you're more responsible, more thoughtful, and more analytical about choosing what to say, when to say, and how to say.
Exactly.
Now, if we talk about, as mentioned, nobility of a believer is standing up at a prayer at night, not with what other people endow with him. It's not in recognition of the world, right? So basically it says that we should believe solely in God, and our whole trust should lie on him. But sometimes again it gets very difficult for us to realize this, that okay, this is the path, because you know the external stimulus is so overwhelming that we tend to forget, and we always think somebody else will come and save us. So how do you think we can instill this belief in God and also this belief in ourselves that we are our own heroes?
That is very important. I remember this, one of the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ, where he said, whoever among you wakes up physically healthy, feeling safe and secure in his home with the food on the day, it is as if the whole world has been granted to him.
Wow.
So it's like your basic necessities have been fulfilled. So when you're talking about this element, this crisis, we need to practice a lot of mindfulness. Like we need to be there in the present moment, and in that very present moment we need to understand, what am I supposed to do right now? What is the right priority over there? Because the moment we understand that priority, that's where our self-sufficient, the skills, they become very active and they start guiding us. This is the time to pray. This is the time to be spending time with your family member. This is the time when you need to sleep. This is the time when you need to exercise. This is the time when it's about to be iftar, so start making your du'as. Or get up, this is Fajr time. Or stop yourself over here. Don't be angry. So it's such a dynamic quality, and it helps you understand what you should be doing. A lot of people, what I come across is they want to be self-sufficient, but basically what is happening to them is they are either in their past or they're in their future. They're either having regretful stories, oh, I used to do this and I'm so ashamed of myself and I wish I had not done this, or I wish I had done this, or they are so anxious about future. What if my deeds are going to be accepted or not? What if I turn out to be a hypocrite one way or the other? So I usually tell people to just be there in that very single moment. Then the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes very easy. Like, if I have to decide for my whole year, my whole month, it becomes difficult. And a lot of life coaches also advise people, live by a day. Live by a moment, and then you will notice a difference in your personality. So don't go in fast track or slow track behind.
That is, I think, very important. Live by the day. And I think this, even if we apply it on a daily life, it can really help us in meeting those targets that we've set for ourselves. Because I think there's this concept that if you have set a target for yourself and you give it a long period of time, let's say a month, so it will take you a month to finish that target. But if you give yourself a week to finish that target, you'll finish it in a week.
Plus what you do is, let's say if the target does require one whole month, you break it down into smaller goals,
Categories, yeah.
and then every day small tasks, and you follow those chunks. So ultimately you'll be able to accomplish a lot. So that is self-sufficiency. But people who overwhelm themselves by saying, oh, I have a big assignment, I have a paper to write, or I have a project to present, and I don't know where to take a start from, and I'm overwhelmed by it. So you would not be able to achieve anything.
Exactly. And so basically discipline is very important towards the journey to self-sufficiency.
Yes, definitely.
Because if you're not disciplined enough, if you do not take into account the importance of time management, you can never ever attain self-sufficiency in that
It will
regard.
be very difficult.
And now if we talk about the global aspect of it, or the community aspect of people, individuals living in a self-sufficient way, and how does what far-reaching impact does it have on our community, on our society, and even if we like move forward as a nation and as a globe. So first let's talk about the holistic perspective of it, then we'll move on to individual relationships.
Well, basically, all the individuals, when they come together and they are self-sufficient, so they will make a very, very effective society. They will be so independent and so good in taking care of their responsibilities. So we would be saving a lot of money, saving a lot of resources, saving a lot of energies, and we'll be moving forward with like 5-year plan, 10-year plan, because now we do have all those plans on the paper, but since people are not self-sufficient, so our plans fall behind those targets and we're not able to achieve much.
Right. I think it's dragged by the people who are not self-sufficient, because the people who are, they're trying to pull them up. But if they don't want to come up, they will never ever let the other person thrive as well.
I'm in fact part of a couple of such projects where we are trying to work on areas like looking into the addictive patterns in the society. Addiction is on the rise. So some of the doctors who are working with me, in fact I'm working with them, so with these doctors we go around and talk to different people, so everyone has their own mindset. So I have noticed that people who are self-sufficient in their thought process, and they believe, yes, we can make the good things happen, they come forward and they join that forum and they're like, yes, we want to be part of this project and we'll make it happen. And then we come across those people who bulldoze the whole idea. They're like, oh, government is not going to help you, oh, this person is not going to help you, oh, nothing is going to happen.
Pessimistic mindset.
Very pessimistic mindset. And that's when we feel, some of the team members, they feel shattered, that have we joined the right cause or not. So if you're self-sufficient and you feel we will put in our best share, and then we'll leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Right. And now if we talk about individual relationships, how important is to teach self-sufficiency to your children from a very early age?
It is very, very important. And for this, what the experts say is that at every age, what you need to do is understand the age appropriate behavior of the child. Okay, like what is the bare minimum a 4-year-old behaves like or can perform, and 10-year-old, 11-year, 15-year. So if the mothers or the parents, they understand what is that age appropriate behavior, and then they guide their kids according to that age appropriate behavior, they discipline them according to that, they give them responsibilities based on that. That's when the kids, they learn to be self-sufficient for their age.
Right.
Like let's say if there's a 10-year-old kid and the mother is sitting and saying, oh, because my son or daughter is not eating sufficient, so let me help them eating the food or putting food in their platter. They should not. The 10-year-old kid can definitely do these things themselves, or you can help them cleaning their room, but they should be doing it basically themselves. This is their responsibility. Similarly, packing up their bags and everything. So you can make a big checklist and see that what are the things that your kids have not learned and guide them towards it. Give them those steps.
Exactly. And I think it's the other way around as well. You cannot expect a 10-year-old to be self-sufficient enough to cook for themselves.
Yes.
Because sometimes parents
well,
have
they
like
can make
high
some
expectations.
sandwiches, or they can make some salad, you know, something small.
Okay.
Or they can help you set the table, or they can help you pass the water or stuff like that, depending upon the energy level they have and what are the things that they are capable of doing. they should be engaged in all the household work and even the responsibilities outside. Let's say you're doing grocery. Many of the mothers, they complain that I don't want to even take my kids out for grocery, because if I was just planning to buy the basic groceries, I end up buying double the amount, because
Yeah.
kids, they want chocolates and candies
Yeah.
and cookies and juices and whatnot, and all the stores, they're loaded with that. So I usually tell the mothers, how about if you teach your children that sense of responsibility? You give them the list, grocery list, you tell them this is the amount of money I have, and let's first buy the essentials, and then if we are left with time, money and energy, then we can see how much we can afford to buy otherwise. So this will teach them self-sufficiency, that if you are on your own, what you can use, what you can't use. And a lot of time we see such kids who are loading themselves in the grocery store, they cannot manage their life even otherwise.
Right. And instilling a sense of responsibility at an early age can actually lead to being self-sufficient individuals later in life.
And a very interesting, another thought that came to my mind, and I thought I'll share it with you, is a lot of mothers I've seen, they have not actually taught their boys especially how to be self-sufficient in their own self, and they ultimately say, iski shadi kara do, let's get him married.
Yeah.
And when he is married, then the wife is going to like teach him, take care of him.
Yeah.
Now, how do you expect that if for like 25 plus years you have not taught your son anything, and you're expecting him to be self-sufficient the moment the wife comes, and then you label the wife, why don't you tell him this, why don't you teach him this? So that's not appropriate behavior.
Yeah. I think that this is very important to highlight, because this is the common mindset that I think everyone has heard living in Pakistan, at least. Because even if the boy is being immature or irresponsible, they're like, okay, give him the responsibility of a wife and children, and somehow
then the wife will teach him.
The wife will teach him. So
she
the
will she will basically come with some magic wand, and she will just hit him with that, and he will end up doing everything.
So I think this is a very toxic sort of a mind, sort of a behavior instilled in our society, and it has I've seen it has far-reaching impact on marriage as well. Okay, now if we talk about self-sufficiency in terms of having your basic needs covered, right? Like you have enough food on the table, you're able to provide for yourself, and all of these things in that regard. So sometimes they say that poverty in itself is a virtue in itself. It teaches you a lot of things. So do you think that being self-sufficient can actually stop you from experiencing those sort of things that are hard and important for you in life as well? Poverty is just a small example.
When we talk about such factors and then we compare it with self-sufficiency, what we have to understand is that self-sufficiency doesn't mean that we cannot have a growth. Right. It's not like I have reached a certain point and now I retire. I do nothing about it. I become stagnant. No, it's not that. Like we look into the life of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, they would be self-sufficient in themselves, even for their finances and basic needs. But they were big businessmen, they were earning, and they were going around and doing a very beautiful job, and they were spending a lot of money on other people. So basically what we need to do for our own life is, first of all, we have to calculate what is it that I need to cover the bare minimum related to finances, so that it is not recommended in Islam that you become self-sufficient in such a manner that you become stagnant, you are static, and then your financial graph starts going down, and then you become dependent on other people. That since I did not take up this course, I thought I was self-sufficient, I don't need to learn anymore, I don't need any growth further, why do I need another house or another place or something like that? No, you have to look into your own environment, you have to look into your own needs, your family needs, and then set certain targets. And once you set those targets, then define certain goals. And some of the goals which are important, especially in these times, is, for example, you need to have some cash reserve, some amount for yourself. You also need to have some retirement plan, some investment plan, rather than thinking, okay, this bare minimum is enough for me, and then ultimately if the need arises, then you have nothing, then you are going out and reaching out to people. You no longer are self-sufficient. So in these times, some of this self-sufficiency requires us to have some backup plan with us.
It is, I think, pertinent to highlight these things, because people mistake it for, okay, I have enough right now, and I will be sustained and I will be sought after this time as well. But
And if I need something, Allah will give it
Allah
to
will
me.
give it to me, but Allah
Allah
will
give it to you.
if
Yes.
you work for it.
Yes.
That is very important, because I see people just sitting at a roadside saying, okay, God will help me. But God only help those who help themselves.
And Rida, I have not only seen people sitting on the roadside, I've seen people sitting in best of the offices and still not doing, still not working. Like, even if you are given a title, you are given a job, you are given a privilege, but you are not putting in your best share. That means you are not self-sufficient.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, in the last minutes, I would like to ask you something that I think bothers me a lot. The Muslims around the world, you see them being dependent on a lot of external factors, a lot of external aid as well, coming from non-believers and coming from different segments of the societies. So why do you think, as Muslims, if we see around the world, we see this habit of codependence and depending on the other person to help us, because Islam teaches us the complete opposite of it. It teaches us to believe in ourselves and work on ourselves. So where do you think we lack in that sense?
I feel we lack in our relationship with God. That is the very big missing link, because if you look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, there was a time, Battle of Badr, and they had very little resources, and they were only 313 in number, and they had to actually the opposite army that were coming, their enemy was more than 1,000 in number, and they had a lot of finances and a lot of material things as well with them. But what made them win, the Muslims, was their level of faith, their reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what we do is, we are practically not disciplined in ourselves. We don't have a focus. We are too self-centered. We are not thinking at the level of community, at the level of ummah. We are only concerned about what I get for myself. And that is why our relationship is very weak with our God. We don't follow the sunnah way of life, and that is why we are suffering at every end. We are just trying to please other nations or other ideologies, one way or the other.
And trying to adopt them
Yes.
in our lives. But we should be mindful of the fact that the right way to go about it is through Quran and Sunnah.
Yeah.
So on this note, I'll conclude today's transmission. Thank you so much, Dr. Kanwal Kaisar. It was about self-sufficiency. We talked about interdependence, codependence, and the importance of realizing and believing in your own self and trusting God Almighty at the end. Now, on this note, I'll bid you farewell. Allah Hafiz.
بك خير خلق كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما